I have always loved hospitality because I'm part of a team, you know, and I had a real fear of, once I am the employer, will they look at me as the other people? I've worked in restaurants where, you know, the employers were referred to as the overlords. So that was a big fear of mine. I don't think Tom had that fear as much because Tom doesn't overthink things like I do. He was sort of like, what do you mean? We're great. People like us. It'll be fine. Tom and I don't necessarily know if we're going to do this forever or what our future will look like. So I think we have a really big focus on Margot as the place that we've opened to serve what we like. And we're really lucky that other people like it. There was a lot of fears around, is what we think is good going to be thought of as good by other people?
Right.
You know, like you can come up with your opening menus and think that it looks awesome and tastes awesome, but then it was like, what if that's just what we like and no one else likes it?
So you and Tom have dined out in some incredible places, no doubt, all around the world. I always ask this question of front of house professionals, but can you describe for us one of the most memorable service experience you've ever had?
Yes, I can.
What that was like?
100%. And it's got an extra juicy, fun little ending as well.
Thank you. We love those. The Kitchen Day podcast is proudly supported by Boring Oat Milk, taking care of the boring detail so you can focus on the important stuff, like your morning coffee. Welcome to the first Kitchen Day podcast. We exist to share stories from the front of house, service professionals, baristas, bartenders, restaurateurs, everybody who's involved in creating a beautiful guest experience.
And Dom and I are very excited to be talking to Juno Miers from Margot, who's going to be our very first guest on our Kitchen Day podcast to give us an insight on her journey through hospitality to where she's ended up now owning her very own business. Welcome, Juno.
Thank you.
Juno has carved out a reputation not just for excellence in service, but for creating the kind of experiences that stay with you long after you've left the table. We're going to talk about Juno's journey through hospitality, what makes great service in Juno's opinion, the challenges and joys of running a venue, and what the future might hold for hospo here in Aotearoa. Juno, thank you so much for being here. Shall we dive in?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
We would love to know, what is your earliest memory of being in service?
Oh, earliest memory in service is going back to my first job. I was desperate to work in hospitality when I was like 15, and so I lived near Empire Cinema in Island Bay, which at the time was like more of a cafe than it is now, and I just went in there every day after school with a CV and just would pester them.
Was it Angie that owned?
Yeah,
the
at
Empire
the time,
then?
yeah, Angie
Awesome.
and her husband, I can't remember his name. Yeah, and I just pestered them until eventually this poor manager who was just, every time I walked in, he'd be like, oh, here she comes again. He finally gave in to me and he was like, you can start as an usher. And then I just remember sort of walking in there and then being behind the coffee machine. I didn't know how to make coffee yet, but I was like, oh my God, I want to learn how to do this.
That instant draw card, right?
Yeah.
That, you just want to be behind the
Fully.
machine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So cool.
Yeah. And like as soon as I was in a hospitality business, I was just like, my brain was like, what other ladders I can climb? What else can I get to do, you know? So that's it, I suppose. Yeah.
So from an usher to, I guess, guest-facing table service in a restaurant, what was that transition like at the age of 15?
It was exciting. Yeah, it was. I mean, I was quite a nervous, awkward and anxious kid. I'm still pretty all of those things, but definitely moving into service because I had a purpose and a reason for being there and being that person that you're talking to, I felt a lot less nervous than sort of if I was just in a social situation, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I think it was a little bit freeing because I was suddenly like, oh, I'm meant to be here.
Had you gone from the usher to front of house at the Empire, or had you moved on then?
I mean, at the Empire, we didn't do anything like table service, but I moved through, I did everything you can do other than, what's it called when you run the movie and you're I'm having a mind blank.
Projectionist?
Yeah, I didn't
Projectionist?
get to projectionist, but I learned everything else. So I was scooping ice cream, I was making coffee, clearing cafe tables, that sort of thing.
And that's kind of everybody's introduction to hospitality, right? You get
Yeah.
to do a bit of everything. You start off washing the dishes,
Yeah.
then maybe the kitchen hand, and then you go out and work
Yeah.
out the front. So
You're watching everything that's happening.
that's how you're learning,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
On the job.
But I guess the real move into front of house was when I moved to Auckland. So after I worked in that job until I finished high school, and then I moved to Auckland to study, which I didn't end up actually doing, but that's a different story. But I started working in a bar there. So I started as a glassy at a bar called Whammy Bar,
Road.
which is sort of like a dive bar on K Road. And I was a little baby punk then, so it was extremely exciting because I got to be around everyone that liked the music and played the music that I liked,
Yeah.
and I was just running around clearing glasses and cleaning them. So
Don't
yeah.
you think it's so interesting how hospo tends to attract, especially front of house,
Yeah.
naturally introverted people?
Totally.
Because
Yeah.
we get to be in quite stimulating environments
Yeah.
sort of when we choose to be.
Yes.
And it's almost like playing a role.
100%.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I did arts and drama at school, and I was actually the drama prefect. So
I do love that.
yeah, so I absolutely was like, okay, I'm playing this role. Here I go. Yeah.
And that's so much what service is.
Yeah.
Is you really dial up the volume on your personality just for
Absolutely.
the duration of service.
Yeah.
Which is what people love.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you go home and have a cup of tea and stare at a blank wall while you recover.
Yeah.
Decompress. Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
So, what was Auckland like? What was the bar scene like for somebody who maybe hadn't been exposed to that level of sort of action? And how old were you at this stage?
I was 18.
Wow.
Or, 18 going on 19.
Yeah, that's a big
I
jump,
believe.
isn't it, from Little
Yeah.
Island Bay up to Auckland K
Scooping
Road,
ice
right?
cream,
Holy
too.
moly.
Big
That's a
jump.
big culture shock.
It was very exciting, that's for sure. And I mean, like, you're young and you're drinking and that's sort of, you're partying. So working in a bar when you're doing all of those things is amazing because, you just feel like you sort of get everything a little bit more, you know what I mean? But so I worked at Whammy Bar and Wine Cellar, which was the sort of like little wine bar next to it. And then I also, at the time, was DJing. Not really. Like, I definitely didn't know what I was doing. I was
DJing.
playing songs
Yeah.
from CDs that I chose at a bar called Cassette Number 9
Oh,
downtown
yes.
in Auckland. So I was
Cassette.
getting, like, all sorts of behind-the-scenes views at these different kind of venues.
It's so salacious.
It's so
isn't it?
funny,
It's
yeah.
such a great.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so it was just really exciting and fun. Yeah.
And I imagine, like so many people who are at this early stage of their hospitality career, one of the draw cards to stick around in the game, especially at that age, is the people that you meet and the
Yeah.
people that you work with. Sometimes we laugh and say that we're trauma bonded to our
Yeah.
colleagues through what we experience, but you do form really strong and often lifelong bonds with people that
Yeah.
you meet on the job. Was that your
Absolutely.
experience?
Yeah, totally. It is a really bonding experience. I think I talked about this in Tom and My Kitchen Day, but there's a thing that we talk about in not just in hospitality, but in I guess management, but where it's like a work family, which is a really interesting concept to me because I think I've worked in places where that phrase has been used dangerously, and it's sort of
it's like
divisively gets used to sort of like guilt the workers into,
Yep.
like giving their lives up for a business or whatever. But on the flip side of that, I think that if it's not used toxically, then a work family is like, and they are very prominent in hospitality because, like you say, you get so sort of trauma bonded. And I mean, in the trenches is such a stupid phrase because we don't work in like, we're not in the army, but you do, like, you go through these really intensive, like, mentally exhausting, emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting shifts with these people, and you get to know them so quickly because of that. You end up with a really beautiful work family.
They become a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
support system for you,
Totally.
right? Because they're experiencing the same emotions, the
Yeah.
highs and the lows that you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say 85%, if not 90% of my friends today are people that I've worked with at different restaurants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say the same
Yeah.
because it's an establishing of a common ground really early. Like
Yeah.
you say, you go through really intensive moments. It could be working an intensely busy shift while you're understaffed, and it's maybe
Yeah.
it's you and the few others
Yeah.
who are holding down the whole shift.
Yeah.
Encountering, really difficult guests or
Yeah.
or really difficult chefs in the kitchen, if
Yeah.
or like you say, super long hours and that physical exhaustion hits.
Yeah.
And oftentimes your colleagues, they're the only ones who understand that singular
Yeah.
experience because they're doing it right alongside you.
Totally.
And so
Yeah.
there's so much that's shared but unspoken between you.
Yeah.
It's such like ripe ground for a really strong relationship to form.
Totally. Yeah, and it's amazing. And a lot of those people are people that are travelers. And so then you end up with this amazing worldwide network of people that you're really good friends with that you can visit at some point or other. So
Yeah.
I've visited ex-colleagues, aka my best friends, in Canada, different parts of England, in Amsterdam, and in Paris. So, like,
That's
how
incredible.
cool. And in Melbourne, of
That's
course.
amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a real, like, I don't, this might sound soppy, but for those people in my life, like, I love them.
Yeah.
I deeply, deeply love
Yeah.
them because they've seen me at my best and seen me at my worst and vice versa.
Yeah.
And we've experienced things together that, have sort of built our character. I'm sure that would be the same
Yeah.
experience for you.
Yeah, and you really, really come to respect each other.
It's
super
like a
quickly,
bond that you
right?
forge.
Yeah.
It's super strong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hospo.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So-
it's beautiful.
So from going from the cinema and
Yeah.
then up to the bars up in Auckland,
Yeah.
when did you make, I guess, the leap, I'm going to call it the leap, to, I don't know, into a restaurant? Because those are completely
quite a lot
different
later.
parts,
Yeah, I was
know?
like, at this point in my life, I was not like, I want to work in hospitality forever. I was just like, I'm
It's paying the
enjoying this a
bills.
lot, like a lot. And it's what I'm doing right now. I'd also just dropped out of university because I was going through quite a lot of health stuff. So I couldn't attend regularly enough to stay in my course.
What were you studying?
I was studying fine arts, which
You laughed
looking-
then. Why did you laugh?
well, because I just absolutely know I would have dropped out for other reasons if I hadn't have had to drop out,
Were you looking for a reason to drop out, do you mean?
Oh, yeah, I don't think I should have ever enrolled in fine arts. It was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm the arts and drama prefect. I guess I'm doing this, So,
Makes sense
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
but I got there and I knew, like, the moment I set foot in there, I was like, this is not the course for me. But I didn't have the balls to drop out just because...
It's a big call to make.
And there's also, like, I have a real fear of, like, spending other people's money, and like a lot of that wasn't my own money, so it's like a loan that you're taking out. I guess that is your money, but it feels like it's someone else's money in my mind. My
Also-
parents were helping me.
I was going to say, was that a
Yeah.
conversation you had to have with mum and dad just to...
Yeah, I mean, I didn't ever actually have to have that conversation with them because I ended up having to drop out because of my health.
Yeah.
So we didn't end up getting there, but yeah, I definitely know that wouldn't have been what I would end up. I think I probably would have changed to graphic design.
Yeah.
Or drama. Who knows?
Also, probably, tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe, one of the things that was in the back of your mind was there's a real stigma if you're going to drop out of uni and pursue
Yeah.
a hospo job full time. Is that a credible choice? Is that,
Totally.
that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because that's a really common experience.
Yeah, fully. I don't think that at that point I was as all-seeing on my love of hospitality. So
Hindsight.
yeah, but yeah. So going back to what you were asking, I came also for the health reasons. I moved back to Wellington after working at Wine Cellar and Whammy Bar for quite some time, and then when I got here, I was like, well, I want to keep doing that. And the obvious next place I wanted to work was a bar on Cuba Street called Mighty Mighty. So
Nice.
at Mighty Mighty, I learnt so much from the amazing Sally Thompson, who was the manager, and she was just maitre d', bartender, crowd controller, HR extraordinaire, basically.
And that was the bar at the time, wasn't it? Everyone was talking about Mighty Mighty.
It was.
It was just the place to go.
And it is sorely missed in this city. But, so I learnt so much there, and I really couldn't let that job go either. I ended up sort of having to reduce to part-time to go and pursue other things, but I always kept a finger in the pot, and I would work 1 day a week until it closed, basically. But yeah, so I worked at Mighty Mighty for, I think it was like 2 years, mostly full-time, and then I dropped to part-time and went and worked at another restaurant called Sweet Mother's Kitchen as a bartender there.
Was it Diane was the owner there at the time?
Yeah, Diana. Yeah. And so that was where I made the switch to front of house, because I started working there as a bartender and then was asked if I would be interested in getting into management, which I absolutely was.
So at that stage, when you made the switch from Mighty Mighty to Sweet Mother's Kitchen, did you know that you were good at front of house, or was it still just a job to pay the bills?
I definitely knew that I enjoyed it a lot, and I also knew that I was pretty good at like problem solving, but I definitely didn't think I was good,
right?
You know. But at that point, a lot of people were telling me that I was good at it. Like, I remember quite distinctly my parents came in with my aunt and uncle, who are from Auckland, and my uncle is like an entrepreneur. He doesn't work in hospitality, but he definitely eats out a lot, and he goes to quite sort of fancy places. And they came to Sweet Mother's Kitchen, which was funny to see them there because it was not the kind of place they would choose to go. Do you know what I mean? But they came because I was there. I have a very supportive family who have always come to where I work, I think, strongly, regardless of whether they would choose to be there or not.
That's incredible.
But yeah, they came, and my mum told me later that my Uncle Mark had turned to them while they were just watching me on the floor, and he said to my parents, "She is made to do this. She is a natural," which was relayed to me later, and I was like, whatever,
Sure.
because I was far too embarrassed, or I don't know, not good at taking compliments. That remains. But yeah, and then so at Sweet Mother's Kitchen, I wanted to get into management. So the first part of that was getting a duty manager's license.
Right.
But the second part of that was, if you're going to be managing, then you also need to know how to do the floor. So I ended up going pretty much with zero waiting experience onto, at the time, I would have said one of the busiest.
I was going to say, it was very well known, wasn't it? Like the key lime pie there, people would be talking about that.
It was crazy. And I also had to learn how to run a wait list, because we never took bookings, but it was like from on, say, a busy Sunday or a Friday or Saturday night, you would start a wait list at the start of the night because you'd fill up immediately.
Right.
And it would just be rolling for the rest of the night. But yeah, so I learnt there. And it was definitely a lot of trial and error on the floor, but I kind of got pretty hooked on it. And so that's definitely where I had my early waiting experience. And then I got into management. And then, of course, management comes with a lot of, you have to train other people. So you learn a lot through training, even if perhaps I didn't quite have the experience behind me in those things that I was training. You know what I mean?
People don't understand how big of a jump something like that could be, and how much responsibility somebody has when they're running the floor of a really busy restaurant, and especially running the door.
Yeah.
And then managing a wait list.
Totally.
That is an immense job, and terrifying if you've not done it, but also wildly addicting when you get good at it. And the thrill of an intensely busy service is like akin to a drug.
Oh,
you're running the floor, right? You're in charge of the
it.
orchestra.
Yeah.
That's
Everyone
great.
is watching you.
Yeah.
You touch every single diner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have an impact on every single guest. You interface with every single diner. And,
And you support all of the staff.
Every single person. You're essentially the puppet master.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, but also so much fun if you're nailing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I didn't necessarily I think I got pretty good at that pretty quickly, but the thing that made me really want to get better was that I was like, okay, well, I'm the manager, I'm taking care of my team. And there were other managers that perhaps were a little bit more of an old philosophy, like were a bit scary, for example, to work for. And I didn't necessarily ever want to be like that, but it's also just not something I'm not a yeller, like that was never. So I was like, no, we have to manage like from a place of caring about these people. And so that was really, I didn't understand what I was doing technically, but that's where I was coming from, and so
your service philosophies, that the way that you lead and run a business now, that's kind of where it started at Sweet Mother's Kitchen.
Yeah.
But you maybe didn't realise that this is the kind of leader that you would be. What are some of your sort of non-negotiables when it comes to the way that you lead a team, the way that you run a service, the way that you run a business?
I think that's like number one, you have to care about everyone. You have to care about the people that you're working with and who you're managing. And you have to care about the people that are coming through your door. If you don't care about them, then like you're not going to see the things that they need. We have a duty of care to everyone that we are in charge of, that we employ or that we are managing. But we also have a duty of care to everyone that comes through our door, because you're it's hospitality. You're looking after them. You're hosting them. So that's definitely it. And I think also like knowledge is power. You've got to have really good product knowledge. Yeah. And you've got to be interested. You've got to really love eating out. If you don't love food, then I mean, there are people that can come at this from a different perspective and nail it, because we're all different. But if you don't love food and drink, you're at a real disadvantage in this industry, I think.
Yeah, well, you can't sell something that you're not passionate about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and customers can pick up on that vibe when they come in. Absolutely. It's really important that the customer experience is the best experience they can possibly have.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always said that the best waiters are the best diners. Like if you feel really at home in a restaurant environment and you enjoy navigating a menu and you enjoy the whole ceremony of dining out, whether you're dining out at, Customs for a coffee or Rita for the whole shebang, if that feels like a natural place for you, you're going to make an exceptional server.
Totally. Yeah.
Because you're aware of all of those soft touch points that diners need but maybe don't know that they need.
Yes. Yeah. Fully.
So now you're running the door at Sweet Mother's Kitchen and service is intense and you're loving it.
Yeah.
Where to from there?
So from there, I entered a mental period of, because I got quite sick again, I ended up needing a lot of, I had this illness which meant that sometimes I was in and out of hospital and had to like completely stop working.
Right.
And sometimes I was all good for a while and it was a little bit unpredictable. But so that meant that I couldn't really hold down a full-time job, but everyone wants part-timers or casual staff. And being a part-time or a casual staff that can do all of the things I just listed, bartend, wait, do dishes, make coffee, meant that I was in high demand for those roles.
It must have been hard to keep that energy going though, because like you're saying, if you're looking after yourself and hospital takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it was, but also I find it very invigorating, especially if you've ever been, like housebound because you're sick. It's so boring and you so desperately want to go out and sort of like see people again. Even if you're an introvert, you eventually are like,
need that contact. Just need that contact.
Yeah. You miss that side of your personality being able to come out.
Totally. Like I need to talk to someone other than my parents, who were very lovingly looking after me at that time. But yeah, so I was holding down, I think my record at the time was 5 part-time jobs at once.
It's actually not unheard of in this industry.
A bit crazy, yeah. I remained part-time at Sweet Mother's Kitchen, and then I also worked at Paquito back when it was owned by the wonderful Mike Hay. And then I was also working part-time at Mighty Mighty still. And then I also worked part-time for Parrot Dog when they were on Vivian Street. I ran their cellar door, which is not really hospitality, but it was akin, if you
Totally.
will. Yeah, and then I was just picking up bar shifts everywhere I could. And then at some point in there, I also worked at Gramercy. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Wow, quite the scope.
yeah. Yeah, I was all over the place, fingers in all the pies. But that was very cool because it was that's what I needed for like just to pay the bills and things like that. But all of those people that I was working for were incredibly supportive of my sort of health journey. And so if I was like, I've got to go pretty much at the drop of a hat, they were all pretty understanding. And they'd take me back once I was on the other side of things. So
you're working with and for a lot of quite prominent Wellington business owners at this stage in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
Tell me about how your position at the Breslin came about.
So my position at the Breslin came about in quite a sort of funny way. I got officially discharged from hospital, which was huge news because that had been, I think, a 6-year journey. And even longer than that, I'd been unwell before I'd sort of actually realised how unwell I was. But so officially I was in and out of hospital for 5 or 6 years. And then I think that the Breslin opened in 2014. Yeah, it did. So I got discharged early 2014. I was like, okay, here I go. I'd been waiting for my turn to go and travel.
Right.
You know, all of my friends had gone travelling. Everyone I knew moved to Melbourne, including a boyfriend at the time I was in a long-distance relationship with.
Rude.
So rude. No, it's okay. It was understandable.
It worked out in the end.
And I really had always believed that I was going to move to Amsterdam because I'm half Dutch. And I was absolutely certain that I was going to move to Amsterdam at some point and learn Dutch.
Right.
And then that was my life plan, you know.
Right.
I didn't see much past that, but it was going to happen. So I was like, okay, stepping stone. I probably shouldn't move to the other side of the world when I've been discharged from hospital, but you know, it's a little bit scary if you, like, what if I get sick again sort of thing. So I was like, well, I'll move to Melbourne now. So I bought a ticket to Melbourne. I was ready to go. And then the next morning after I bought a ticket to Melbourne, Katie Woodhead, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, but she was the operations manager for Doe Holdings. Mm-hmm. So Doe Holdings was the company that had the Breslin brothers, so Nadi and Enzo, 2 Wellington legends, and their restaurants. So they had and still have Scopa Cafe Cucina at the time. Now I think it's just called Scopa. And at the time they also had Crazy Horse Steakhouse. They had Duke Carvel's. They had a coffee company, like they were roasting their own coffee. And a few little cafes connected to that. They were part owners in Tommy Millions. Am I forgetting something? I'm not
Probably.
sure.
Probably. Yeah,
They had a lot
Their
going
empire
on.
was
Yeah.
vast,
Yeah.
right?
Hospitality icons.
Totally. And it was cool because it was a big restaurant group, but the owners were still working in it. So it was really, I mean, it wasn't a big restaurant group in restaurant group standards, but for someone who'd never worked for a restaurant group, it was like, wow, this is cool. We're connected to so many different places. But so Katie was their operations manager and she was in charge of assembling the team for their new open, which was called the Breslin.
Right.
And so literally the morning after I'd bought this ticket to Melbourne, it was on a sale, so it wasn't very expensive, but still, I woke up to a message from Katie saying, Juno, I want you to come and be one of our managers at this new restaurant.
Where had you worked with Katie before?
I hadn't worked with Katie,
Oh, wow.
but when you work at Wellington's most exciting bar,
Mighty
you meet
Mighty.
You meet a lot of
everybody.
people.
Yeah,
Right.
because Mighty was the place that all hospitality people went after work. Not all, because obviously there's other bars out there, but a lot of hospo staff would go to Mighty
The
after
one
work.
degree of separation in this
Yeah.
industry.
So even though maybe I didn't know everyone by name, I knew a lot of
knew
the
the drinks.
hospitality
Yeah,
community,
yeah.
and I knew their drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd gotten to know a lot of the people that were from that group because
Right.
they were all restaurants around Cuba Street as well. So it was the local, if you will.
Did you know that Nadi and Enzo owned the place where Katie was suggesting that you come and work?
Well, it wasn't open yet.
It wasn't
so
open.
I didn't really know anything about it, but I did know their last name.
The clue was in the name.
Yeah.
The Breslin.
Yeah, and I knew them pretty well. Like, Scorpa has been quite a big part of my life well before I even got into hospitality. I mean, it was opened when I was, I don't know, tween years or something. I'm not sure. I think it's been open for, they had like a 20-year anniversary
Incredible.
recently or something like that.
And it still feels young
Yeah.
and fresh and relevant and
Yeah.
cool, as if it had opened last year.
Totally. I mean, don't quote me on that time frame if I've got that wrong. I apologise. So my dad is a air conditioning and ventilation guy, and he had a company called Ductari for most of my life. Basically, his main job was that he would fit out new restaurants and hospitality venues with their fans, hoods, ducting, etc. And so he knew a lot of the hospitality community because he was the man about town, you know. And so, but then a lot of the places that he would work, he would then become a regular at, A, because he kind of knew the staff. Sometimes they would also like give him a tab as part of his payment, that sort of thing. So we started going to Scorpa pretty quickly. So I remember like every birthday between the ages of, I think, like 14 and 18, we went there. Even on my 21st birthday, we went to Scorpa for dinner, and then my twin brother and I hired Duke Carvel's out for drinks afterwards. So
Nice.
I've been in and out of this company before I even worked at it. Yeah.
Yeah, for those people who don't know Duke Carvel's, it's in the what is now Noble Rot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was another wonderful venue. That one's sorely missed as well. But then again, you wouldn't be able to smoke in there anyway now, and that was a big appeal.
So was it daunting thinking about going and working or at, well, even now,
Yeah.
hospo royalty? Like
For sure.
Walking in there.
100%.
I mean, I know sometimes he's going to hate that I say this, but standing in front of Enzo and trying to have a conversation with him, I'm still a bit awestruck. But, you know, the opportunity of going there and learning from two of
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
Was that exciting? Was it?
And also Melbourne. Like, what was
Yeah.
your thinking about your ticket?
Well, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so like touched, Katie, that you'd think of me, but you've missed your chance.
See ya.
I've bought a flight to Melbourne, and she was like, come and work for me for 6 months, and if you still want a flight to Melbourne at the end of that, I'll buy you a new flight. And we agreed on that because I guess I was easily swayed.
Well, that's a real vote of confidence. I mean,
Yeah.
she obviously had her sights set on you, so your reputation must have preceded you.
I think also she just is so good at her job that she knew that she would be starting a place that would be awesome to work at.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
confidence in me, but much more, I think, confidence in what she was making.
Yeah.
Yeah, and creating.
Did you know Katie at this stage? Like, did you know of her or what she had done other than serving her at Mighty Mighty?
Honestly, not really. I knew that she was in the company, and I knew that she was a manager of some description, and I knew that she worked at multiple of their venues. So I knew that she was important.
Yes.
Katie is so wonderful. She's also hilarious, and when she's drinking, she's not on like at work, you know. So
Yeah.
I more knew Katie as this really fun woman to be around
Yeah.
when she's out having a drink. So well, in any capacity, I'm not trying to make her sound like an alcoholic. No, Katie is just, you know, I was meeting these people when they were off work, so
Yeah.
I just knew them all as really awesome people. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say.
Katie
Yeah.
is hospitality incarnate. I mean, she's
Incarnate.
just won
Yes.
the Cuisine Magazine Sommelier Award, which is so wonderful for her and a testament to her wine knowledge. But her wine knowledge is only one part of
Yeah.
her expansive CV and all of the skill and talent that she brings to the industry.
Yeah, so she was like, she convinced me to come on board.
Yeah.
And I started there as day manager. And yeah, like you say, it was pretty intimidating because even though I'd been doing a lot throughout the industry, and I mean, when you look back at all those things I just listed, I'd obviously worked in lots of different places, and I'd been doing it for a while now. I think I'd probably been in hospo for sort of like 7 years, but I mean, consider that 3 of those were when I was 15, 16, 17,
Totally.
you know. before I started there. But so I was experienced, but I definitely I didn't think that I was anything like the people that were coming on board beside me. So we had Johanna Brown, who is a wonderful friend of mine. She came on as the other manager. So Katie was beginning as the general manager, and then that job was later going to be taken over by Lorenzo. We were the two other managers. There was Jo Brown was night manager, and I was day manager at the start. And so she'd been maitre d' at the Matterhorn, which in my mind, having worked, so for anyone that doesn't know, Matterhorn and Mighty Mighty were basically in the same building, but one was downstairs and one was upstairs. And the Matterhorn to me was like amazing. It was, the service was always on point, the drinks were incredible, and it was just like, it was a serious venue, if you will. It was lots of fun as well, but I considered her to be far more experienced and up for the job than I was. Right. You know what I mean? And also she had experience managing a big venue, like Matterhorn was big, and the Breslin was gigantic. It was 160 seats.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's worth saying that we're recording this at Loretta pre-service, so we have suppliers dropping off stock, we have chefs prepping, and we have rubbish trucks doing the rounds. So that's what all those mystery sounds are in the background.
The soothing sounds of a hospitality operation.
Also 160 seats. That's a massive
That
place
is a behemoth.
Yeah.
to juggle and
gigantic.
cut your teeth on.
Yeah, and so I was sort of like the manager, but I was in charge of a lot of people that had been working in much bigger venues than me, and so it was definitely a moment of like, I am learning what I'm doing, but I also definitely, there was a bit of imposter syndrome going on in that first year of being manager. So I started as day manager, and then pretty quickly Katie started training me to be events manager, which was really cool. I really, really enjoyed planning events and helping just put them on in such a big venue. So there was all sorts, there was big birthdays, there was whole venue, like weddings, there was, you name it, we hosted it. And so that was a really cool thing to learn. And then throughout those first couple years, I also started working, well, I obviously worked nights on the floor just as a waiter, and I worked behind the bar as a bartender as well. And, of course, as barista, because we did it all.
Man, you are well-rounded and experienced, right? Wow.
So now you're the day manager at the Breslin. And one of the things that you've mentioned before when you hosted your kitchen day with Tom is that the Breslin brothers and also Katie were some of the most significant teachers of the business of hospitality in your career. What kinds of things were they teaching you? How were they doing it? What was that like?
So I think first and foremost, I mean, I learned a lot as far as skill set and jobs, but I think the thing that they are teaching on a daily basis was how to treat people you work with.
Right.
So I remember really early on, Nardi didn't work at the Breslin regularly, but, well, that's not true. He didn't work at the Breslin full time, but he would do like every Thursday night just to get in there.
Yeah.
And every time he would leave a shift, he would go around and shake everyone's hand and tell them thank you for working. Thank you for your hard work today.
So important.
Which was huge to witness, especially like he would do it to people that he hadn't necessarily had a great shift with, people that he was managing that were not doing well or things like that, or if he'd maybe had words with a chef or something like that, he would still go and thank them. And so that was a big lesson. Not that I wouldn't have done that, but to see it in action is amazing.
That's so respectful.
Yeah, and Katie Woodhead and Enzo both did that as well, in their own way. But
it's the importance of keeping that team together, right?
Yeah,
because hospitality is not an individual thing.
Yeah.
You rely on a team so heavily.
And it's a relationship.
Yeah, totally. So I think I was actively learning by osmosis about how to care for your team and how to make them feel cared for, basically. And then outside of, like the osmosis stuff, there was a lot of it, but I also learned so much, like I was saying, I learned how to be an events manager from Katie, which was a really different skill. Like, I'd sort of dipped a toe into all parts of hospitality so far, but I hadn't done anything like that was so organizational. And you're really being personal to these people in a slightly different way, because some of these people, they're getting married at your venue. So that's such an important day for them. And so you're sort of trying to make them feel seen and heard and cared for the whole process through, not just during the event. So that was a really cool thing and something I really enjoyed learning. And I've continued to be an events manager at every different venue I've worked at since, because it's part of my skill set now, which is cool.
Yeah, that's a very different skill to learn.
Totally.
Right? Whereas, day-to-day hospitality, you might have an interaction, it might be 30 seconds or a minute with somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas with events, you're right, it's a lot more personable.
A lot more personable. Well, not a lot more personal, but a lot more personalised and longer. Yeah. And then I also was I was working on the floor during the evenings as well, not as a manager, but as a waiter and a bartender. And then from there, once I had gotten up to speed, because although I was good, I definitely wasn't at the same level as, say, my friend Jo Brown, who'd been working at Matterhorn. Like, we were working with a lot of highly skilled front of house people. And so once I sort of had gotten up to skill with them, like, you were working a section at the Breslin was like you hit the ground running and you continued running for 6 hours or 8 hours or however long it was. Then I also started but becoming a maitre d' there. That was a whole different beast. So running the door or running the floor, being a maitre d' for a restaurant that is not only gigantic, it's 160 seats, like I said, but it's also 3 different areas that you cannot see from your place where you sort of hang out as the maitre d'. Hang out is not the right term.
I know, your station.
Yeah, so we had a dining room upstairs, which was, I think that was 60 seats. And then we had a courtyard outside, which was something like 80 seats. And then we had a bar inside that had seating as well. And so you're managing the wait list and the bookings. And the bookings are often sort of up to 20 people, if not more. So, or there's just like, you've got walk-ins coming in left, right and centre. You've got people coming in for drinks. You've got people coming in for dinners. You've got a birthday party on upstairs. There's just a lot of moving parts, and the team is gigantic as well. You've got sort of, I think, like 4 chefs in the kitchen plus a kitchen hand. And by the way, that is incredible. Lucas Tock also deserves his flowers for that restaurant.
4 chefs.
And for everything he's done. He's incredible. But running a restaurant of that size and with 4 chefs is insane. And the speed at which they did it was wild.
How many steps are you clocking up in a single shift on average?
So many. Yeah, so many. I was definitely the fittest I've ever been working at the Breslin. Like running up and down those stairs with weights essentially in your hands.
And more on one side than the other.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, so I was just learning from these people that had been living and breathing hospitality for a really long time. Like Nadia and Enzo, born into a hospo family, so it's like in their blood. Katie, I'm pretty sure her parents owned a pub, if I'm not mistaken.
She was born into service.
Either way, she worked in service forever. And then my colleague managers as well, like Jo Brown. I worked with this lovely bartender, bar manager called Caleb, whose name I can't remember right now. So sorry, Caleb. Yeah, I worked with lots of other people that became managers there eventually. We had, and still to this day, one of my best friends is Daisy Cadigan. And Daisy went through the whole chain in Doe Holdings. We used to run an internship, which was a program that I loved so much, but it was that you would take on someone with no hospitality experience that wanted to get into it, and they would work in each of the sites and learn different things at each site. So generally they would start at Tommy Millions and learn, like how to use the tills, basic sales stuff. And then they'd go to Scorpa to learn sort of section management or Duke Cavell's or Crazy Horse, and then they would generally end at Crazy Horse or the Breslin, where it was a little bit more involved service. And at some point they'd also learn a little bit of bartending, how to make coffee.
Yeah, that is incredible, because I think
so cool.
One of the things that this industry really misses is real life experience.
Totally.
But for people entering, when I'm doing recruitment for the restaurants, we have so many young applicants who have no experience, and training staff from the ground up, we call them green staff. So
Yes.
training green staff from the ground up is a massive investment
Yeah.
and such a risk too, because of the transient nature of this industry, particularly
Yeah.
front of house.
Yeah.
So you have to be so intentional about, and there are so few venues that offer
Yeah.
that kind of structured learning. So that is an incredible
Yeah, and
thing
that
for those
was-
brothers to have done.
And that was truly Katie Woodhead's like pet project. That was something she was really passionate about, and she did most of the sort of like planning and training for it. I mean, you would get trained by different managers at each different venue, but she was the overseeing sort of force. But yeah, so Daisy Cadigan started at Doe Holdings as a intern, and then started at the Breslin after her internship and moved all the way up until she was my colleague, like also a manager, also an events manager, could do
Incredible.
anything, could hold down any section.
It
Yeah.
sounds like that sort of
Yeah.
internship structure really helped with the buy-in, particularly in this
Fully.
circumstance. And
Yeah.
it helps to create those long-term employees, I
Yeah.
guess, or because you get buy-in to a
Totally.
business, then it kind of goes back to what you were saying right at the beginning. When you believe in something or you're passionate about something,
Yeah.
then, you're going to,
Yeah.
I don't know, give it your all, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's what that company did really well, was the buy-in.
Yeah.
People were on board to learn what was happening because they wanted to be part of this cool, moving, like force of a restaurant or bar or whatever they were working in.
The Kitchen Day podcast is proudly supported by Upstock. So much of our industry runs on good vibes, but there are corners of our industry that will only thrive with the help of smart tech, and that's Upstock. If you buy or sell wholesale, Upstock is a game changer for your business. It has all of your invoicing, ordering, payments, and logistics in one place. You are going to save hours in your day. To find out more, head to upstock.app.
Yeah.
So you meet quite an interesting guy at the Breslin. Tell us about Tom.
In year 2 of the Breslin, I am on my last day of work before a 3.5-week holiday, which I'm going to visit my brother in Japan, which was very exciting for me. It was my first overseas trip since getting out of hospital, because I never went to Melbourne, of course. So on that last day of being at work before I went on my holiday, a new guy walks in, and I was in the courtyard, and I watched him walk through the bar and then into the changing room, which you can see from the courtyard. You can't see into the changing room, that would be bad.
Thanks for that clarification.
I could see where he was going. He was going to the staff-only area. And I was like, who's that? There's a new guy. And then I was like, oh no, they're going to make friends with a new guy without me. And I was instantly like, oh my gosh, FOMO. Everyone's going to have a strong relationship with this guy by the time I'm back, and I won't know him.
I'll be the odd one out. Yeah. Well, little did they know.
Little did they know I would reel him in. No, but anyway, so Tom and I, once I got back from Japan, we became fast friends, so no need to worry, I didn't miss out. Yeah, I mean, the Breslin also was a place where already it was such a breeding ground of friendships, but in that courtyard was a fireplace, which was lit every day. So when we would all finish work, our knockoff drink would be sitting around a fire.
Oh.
And if that doesn't breed cozy
Romance.
Close relationships,
close
yeah,
relationships.
Instant ambiance.
But also, more so, it just means it's really hard to leave.
Of course.
Yeah.
You can't,
Of course.
You're not just like, oh, I'm just sitting at the bar. It's not that comfortable. I've been here all day. You're suddenly in front of a mesmerizing fireplace and having hilarious jokes. And so your knockoff drink was never just one. No. You would always end up sitting there for a few. Yeah, and so it wasn't until we'd been working together for, I think, 1.5 years before we got together. And then I, at this point, was I think I was sort of assistant manager So I was a little bit like, oh, we can't, like, people can't know. So
Right.
Tom and I tried.
Yeah, so how did that go? Did you have to,
Yeah, we
start off with some
tried to hide our
boundaries, or-
relationship from our colleagues, but they saw right.
I have a
through
feeling
us.
when we speak to Enzo on a future pod.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they all knew what was
He'll give us
happening.
some
We
insight
would
into
like
that.
pretend that we were walking home together because it's the same direction, but like we were not as subtle as we thought.
Points for trying.
But so we got together and just had so much fun together. I mean, we still do, but at that time we had a little bit more free time than say we do now, obviously. But so we would go out and eat out together, and we were just both really excited and passionate about hospitality, and so really loved to go and dine in other restaurants together to see, what was out there.
So Tom was cooking at the Breslin.
Yeah.
At quite a high level in the kitchen at the stage.
Tom became the sous chef.
And you're arguably at sort of the top of your game at the Breslin in terms of what you were doing. Talk to us about that next natural step that often happens for couples in this exact position when you start to think about the leap from employee to owning your own business.
Well, I hadn't ever been like, I'm going to open a restaurant. That was not on the cards for me. If anything, I was like, maybe I'll open a cafe.
Yeah. Daytime hours. Yeah. Nice. Easy.
I was looking forward to that. But really what I had gotten the HR bug from Katie Woodhead because she was so good at it, and I really enjoyed the training aspect, sort of like helping people through, like HR different situations. That's badly worded, but you know what I mean. And so I was sort of like, oh, maybe I'll go and, I don't know, become an HR person or become an ops manager or something like that. But as soon as Tom and I got together, essentially, he was like, so we're opening a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Incredible.
I mean, at that time as well, I hadn't considered it, but I loved working in restaurants.
Yeah.
I still do. So it was like, yeah, sure. There was no moment
So
where
it
I was
definitely
like,
Tom driving that. Were you just along for the ride?
yeah, I mean, I think pretty quickly from going along for the ride, I bought in. So I was like, yeah, that would be cool. Let's do that one day. And especially like we really liked working together as well. So, and we work really well together. So that was a no-brainer as well.
How do you manage that relationship? So like you've got a working relationship,
Yeah.
and you've obviously got a personal relationship as well.
Yeah.
How do you manage those two?
I think we are very lucky because we started out in the professional relationship. So I think if you start in that direction, it's kind of easy because you've already got that online. And then I guess about managing it, it's just about making sure that you make time for each other outside of work as well. Yeah. And remaining professional at work to a certain extent.
Yeah, which is actually
We still got to have fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tom and I are alone at Margot for like from 10 a.m. until sort of 2 p.m. when the first chef comes in. So the professionalism doesn't come online until the afternoon.
until there's a witness in the room.
I'm sure that I could say something wiser about how we manage those relationships, but in truth, we've got it pretty easy. Yep. We work really well together. So it's definitely been the most challenging it's ever been as like joint owners of this restaurant, but we're still really lucky that it's only a little bit more difficult than it used to be. You know what I mean?
I would say, from looking from the outside in, there's a great deal of respect between the two of you. Tom really respects what you bring to the front of house, to the other 50% of the restaurant, and then you really respect Tom's what he does in the kitchen, what he does for to drive the menu at Margot. And without that respect, I mean, respect is sort of foundational because you can have conflicts and you can have moments where you ruffle each other's feathers or rub. Especially the more you get to know each other on a personal level. I mean, you guys are married now, so I would argue that you know very clearly what buttons you can push, you know. But everything comes from a place of just wanting it to be the best that it can be. And ultimately, if he knows that and you know that, you could kind of weather any...
Pretty much,
challenge.
For sure. Yeah, and so it's just a case of, just respecting each other is the big one. And I think we both really, really care about what the other person does and how they feel. So
do you often talk about, I mean, I know we've kind of skipped over from the Breslin to opening Margot, but do you often talk about, like, what are your conversations like? Is your realm the front of house and his realm is the kitchen, or do you both have say over what happens? Do you talk to Tom about how the menu might land for the diners, or what you're thinking? Does he give you insights into how he wants service run? What does that collaboration look like?
I think we have our separate realms, but we're both we're very collaborative, and we're always asking each other for feedback. So, like, yes, we're sort of separate, but we also definitely fine-tune everything together. So if I'm making a new cocktail menu, then I'll show it to him and, like, show him the cocktails, and he will give me his thoughts, and vice versa. Like, I try all of his dishes, and he always wants to know what I think. He always sort of, like, squints his eyes at me thinking that I don't like it until I really convince him that I do. But yeah, and the same, like, we're always talking about what's happening in the restaurant, whether it's service or how different things are running, or how events are going to go, or, you know, this, that, or the other thing, how dishes and drinks are landing in different ways, and how those things can land together in better ways. So it's just about open communication, I think. Yeah.
And I think Dom talked about this briefly. What is the transition like going from employee to now being an employer or owning a business? Because, you know, sometimes when you're an employee, you look at it and you think, oh, you know, the owners, they get everything, and here I am doing the hard work. When you flip that, though, what's the reality like?
Yeah, I think it was very terrifying in lots of ways. You know, like, it's very scary to open a business in all sorts of ways that are probably pretty predictable. Like, there's a lot of risk. What if we fail? What if no one comes?
What if I can't pay wages?
Yes,
yeah. What
exactly.
if I can't pay supplies?
Yeah. What if we don't get enough money to pay people? That's probably my biggest fear.
You, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Those fears have sort of been, they exist, but they've been assuaged somewhat. Is that the right word? I'm not sure. Because we're very careful business people, you know, like, we do our accounting very carefully. There's always, like, there's a separate account where we're saving money for all of those certain things that we're going to need to fork out for at some point. But the other fears were, like, I have always loved hospitality because I'm part of a team, you know, and I had a real fear of, once I am the employer, will they look at me as the other people? I've worked in restaurants where, you know, the employers were referred to as the overlords, you know, and that was, people I worked with in that restaurant were, like, joking, oh, you're going to become an overlord, blah, blah, blah. And so I was really scared that I would lose that camaraderie, and that I wouldn't have such rewarding relationships with my colleagues anymore because they were afraid to talk to me. So that was a big fear of mine. I don't think Tom had that fear as much, because he was sort of, Tom doesn't overthink things like I do. He was sort of like, what do you mean? We're great. People like us. It'll be fine. Yeah. But I was really scared about that. And and then there were lots of fears around whether people would come, whether people would like us. There was a lot of fears around, is what we think is good going to be thought of as good by other people?
Right.
You know, like, you can come up with your opening menus and think that it looks awesome and tastes awesome, but then it was like, what if that's just what we like and no one else likes it, you know?
So is that how you look at your offering and your menu? Like, do you, when you and Tom are sitting down and creating something new, are you thinking about what you like doing, or are you thinking about what a customer might like?
It's all about what
it's all about what
It's all about what we like, because we like good stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's actually why people love Margot, is because they want, they, you know, that kind of conviction that comes from cooking exactly what you like to eat. People love that.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, I think if you look at it from the perspective of what we actually serve, like, a really good example is our wine list. You couldn't look at that and say that's based off of what people like, because I put so much weird stuff on there. You know, like, I really like having a wine on my wine list that is unusual and replacing something that's similar. Like, so I very rarely have a Sauvignon Blanc on by the glass or at all. So instead I'll have something that I think people who like Sauvignon Blanc will like if I can just show it to them. So I love to explore new things, and I love to not be challenged, because that sounds combative, but I love to be introduced to new things.
Totally.
And so that's really how I make my wine list. It's interesting wines that I think is a big enough spread of that I'm going to be able to help people find what they like, even if they don't necessarily recognize the varietals. So there's no way that you could truly say I've made that wine list from what people like, because it sort of doesn't appeal to... I don't have a Sauvignon Blanc and a Pinot Gris.
I think that's a really good thing, though, because it goes back to what you said previously, that if you don't have that buy-in, or you're not passionate about what you're selling, how are you supposed to sell it? But if it's something that you like, you can talk to the customer about that, you can recommend stuff to them. And
also your wine list is a real signal to the diner about what style of service they can expect, because this isn't just a point and order. This is an opportunity for a conversation from a really engaged, well-informed, professional host who is there to elevate your guest experience beyond just the point, and I'll have that. Yeah. And I think the other thing about, like, going back to what you said, what's the process around our menus, it's Tom and I don't necessarily know if we're going to do this forever or what our future will look like. So I think we have a really big focus on Margot as the place that we've opened to serve what we like. And we're really lucky that other people like it, and that's awesome. And obviously if people weren't liking it, then we would be smart business folk and try to change our tune a little bit. But so this is our opportunity to serve the things that we love and the way that we want to, and we might not always have that opportunity, so we've got to enjoy that while we can. Also, Juno, I would say Margot, whether you know it or not, is your opportunity to start to, in some ways, rewrite the narrative on what diners can expect from professional hosts and professional service. If I look at it from the perspective of service only, so putting the menu to one side, everything that you've spoken to really speaks to a very particular style of service, a very engaged, very heart-led style of service, which you're very well known for in Wellington. Thank you. And having a business like Margot do that, offer that kind of service to diners, in a way, if I zoom out, go big picture, you're sort of showing diners, almost teaching diners a different kind of set of expectations that they can bring to a restaurant in terms of their service experience, and that's really impactful. You know, if they're going to get that kind of magic at Margot, they should be able to walk into any other restaurant and expect that same kind of magic, because the service needs to be as good as the menu, arguably better in restaurants that are sort of worth their salt these days. Would you agree? Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing about service is that you as the server are the connection between the concepts, the ideas and the products and a good time. Totally. Like, as simple as that. If you don't buy into those concepts and ideas and products, and also like have the passion and the drive to learn about them, then you're not able to communicate them to and deliver them to the guests in a way that is accessible and enjoyable. So the service has to be like attention to detail and knowledge driven, but then be delivered in a personable way. So especially at Margot. Yeah. So when you're recruiting for front of house staff to work alongside you, you're recruiting for people who you want to be representing the best of Margot alongside you. Yeah. What kinds of things are you looking for in applicants? It's an interesting question to ask in this time, because we opened in 2022, so just post-COVID. Yeah. And there was, we know this, but I don't know, the people listening might not know this. There were no travellers in the country, and travellers in New Zealand have been a big part of the experienced hospitality workforce, whereas it's much more common that a green person, an inexperienced person, would be from New Zealand in this country. That makes a lot of sense. When I've been recruiting in different restaurants prior to COVID, it was always sort of, you're looking for this skill set and this personality. And
the rest can be trained, and common sense.
And
Number one.
confidence. Yeah.
But everything else can be trained, and I would argue even confidence can be trained. But post-COVID, it was a very different sort of world. There was very, very few applicants that had any experience. And so we sort of had to take on, I was a little bit like, oh no, I've started this restaurant that has crazy products that need quite a lot of hand selling, and we don't have anyone with experience applying. So a lot of my team have started green front of house. But it's been a really awesome, I mean, having someone come on green is a really awesome thing, because you can train them exactly how you want to, and you can teach them from the start.
In a similar way to the internship program.
100%. Yeah. And so I took a lot of those experiences and applied them. You know, like there's even been a lovely staff member of mine who didn't know how to use a cash register, like knew how to use a till but had never handled cash, which made me feel so old. But you know, like, it's those sorts of things that you're not just training big picture, you have to really also look at those small details, granular, and just sort of use that salt shaker method and teach them everything slowly but surely. And it makes the training process a bit longer, but it's really rewarding at the end of it, and it's really cool.
Especially if people come to that position with the right attitude, because so much of what we do in hospitality is soft skills, and so much of what we do on the floor might seem really unimportant to diners or unimportant to people learning. But if we say things like, when a group stands up from a table and they walk away, this is the order in which you clear the table, that might seem so trivial to somebody, but if you can explain the why, and it all kind of connects back to the guest experience. It's, if you've got somebody with the right attitude and they've sort of signaled early on, I want to be in this industry, they absorb that so much faster.
Totally. Yeah, so I think, to go back to your question, the answer is I'm looking for common sense and a good attitude. And that's kind of it. And then it also always now will depend on what actual role you've got available. But especially during those early Margot moments, we had to just go from there and then train them everything.
Juno, we've just talked about your amazing journey in hospitality. I mean, you started off really, really young to where you are now. You've got your own business now. You've had some amazing experiences by the sounds of it. What's one thing, I guess, when you look at hospo, one thing that you'd like to see change in the hospitality industry?
I was thinking about this question last night, and it's an interesting question to answer, first of all, because it's hard to say what's changed since you started, because those were such formative years and I've changed so much.
The world's
changed. But I think that in hospitality specifically, there's been, and I mean, this kind of goes out of hospo, but there's a better work-life balance these days. So it used to be that almost every restaurant you'd start in was 7 days. And now it's a lot more widely accepted by like restaurateurs or employers that it's going to be okay if they just do 5 or 6 days and have 1 day's closure. And they sort of have realised that closing for 1 day, yes, you don't have that income, but you also don't have to pay staff for a day, and it ensures everyone gets those days off every week.
Lifestyle and mental health is a massive part now of hospitality, right?
Hugely. And then the other thing I think that has changed quite a bit is like the sort of like old school army mentality has lifted quite a bit, if not gone away from a lot of places that we've worked in.
It's funny when you encounter it now, it seems so out of place and so jarring.
So yucky.
Which has been such a positive change for the industry, because you're not going to get the best out of people if you rule them with fear.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've all worked for people like that.
We surely have. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing, I think, is that slightly better work-life balance and a little bit more of a holistic approach to how we run restaurants and venues.
It translates to it, because Margot exudes and energy
Yeah.
that encompasses all of that kind of stuff. And when guests come in, the food and the drinks is just one part of the reason why they're there. You know, like as we all know, fewer and fewer people are dining out and they're spending less. So when guests walk over the threshold of your business, it's a real sign of, you know, it's a vote of confidence from them for you, for all of the ways in which you run your business, for all of the things that you offer.
Yeah.
They're choosing you. And that's a responsibility that we all take so seriously.
Yeah.
So you and Tom have dined out in some incredible places, no doubt, all around the world. I always ask this question of front of house professionals, but can you describe for us one of the most memorable service experience you've ever had?
Yes,
what
I can.
That was like
100%, and it's got an extra juicy, fun little ending as well.
Thank you. We love those.
So one of Tom and my first eating and drinking holidays, we went to Melbourne together, and we booked in at the Town Mouse.
Fabulous.
And which was run by Amber and Jay, and I think there were a couple other owners as well.
Christian,
yeah,
and Dave.
And Dave, I think, was also an owner.
Dave Verrill.
But yes, so Amber and Jay McCabe. That's actually not his last name, but
Christian
Amber
McCabe.
Christian McCabe, and nope, I'm not going to remember it. I'm sorry, Jay. But we went to the Town Mouse and had a degustation with matched drinks, and it was really like the first time in my life that I had seen the kind of service that I have gone on to want to deliver in action. And it was, every detail was anticipated, like nothing was left wanting. There was no moment where you were like, oh, I'm waiting too long for this, or what should I drink next? Before you even started to think that thought, there was like someone would turn up with a suggestion or a menu, and it was really professional, but it was really relaxed and personable. It had all of the notes of what you might expect in fine dining fancy service, but with none of the sort of stiffness, Right. It was really warm and really knowledgeable, and we tried some of the most amazing drinks I've ever tried. One that lasts is the dessert. There were 2 desserts in the degustation, and one of the drinks match was like a red rice sake, or it might not have been a sake, but it was definitely a red rice spirit or liqueur or something like that. And clearly it doesn't last that well. No, but I think about that match all the time because it was a drinks pairing that we thought was going to be all wine. And then every couple of courses, something that was really unexpected but really perfect for the dish would turn up, and they'd tell you about it. And it was, and also the information about each product was being delivered to you in a way that was so interesting, but not like so intense and just like a wall of text that they'd memorized.
Yeah.
It was really, really, every part of that experience was like interesting and personable and lovely, and they just didn't miss a beat, and it was awesome. And the vibe in there was really, really awesome. It was like fun and bouncy and lively, but also, just like everything was going really smoothly.
Yeah.
You looked around the restaurant and everyone was having a great time, staff included.
Yeah.
And the food was incredible as well. And the fun ending to that is that years later, Amber and Jay are now 2 of my really close friends.
It's incredible.
Because they moved back to New Zealand, and Amber for a short time became ops manager at a company that I was working at. And so we became friends there. And then later on, we sort of realized and connected those things. And I was like, oh my God.
So for those people who have been to Melbourne or are going to Melbourne, Christian and Dave, who were owners of the Town Mouse at that time, now own the wine bar Embla.
Yes. Which is another
town.
experience I could have listed, but the Town Mouse was just that tiny bit better.
Incredible. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Other than Amber and Jay and Christian, and you've mentioned Katie and you've mentioned Sally, who are some people in New Zealand, perhaps wider, further afield in New Zealand, who you think are really at the top of their game in service right now?
So let me preface this with Tom and I for the last 3 years have worked 6 days a week and have not travelled. So I can't tell you anyone else in New Zealand with, I've been to restaurants before those 3 years outside of Wellington and I loved them. But the ones that I'm able to go to in Wellington are the ones that I'm going to list because I've been there in the last, couple years. So first of all, at Ortega Fish Shack, there is always going to be Dave McDonald, who is incredible. We love Davey. He's one of the owners, but also maitre d' that's been there forever, and he's incredible at his job. But their team is always really, really good, and it has changed throughout the years that I've been going because it's been open for so long. But every different rendition of that team is always incredible, and it astounds me because the team is often quite young. It's often young uni students, but no matter how young the service team, I'm getting older, so maybe that's part of it.
No, I know what you mean.
They always have that same, like we were saying earlier, it really feels to me like the buy-in is there.
Yeah.
And everyone who works there really believes in what they're doing, even if it's not their priority and they're studying geology or whatever, and they're really passionate about rocks. They also somehow manage to be really passionate about service and providing a really wonderful experience. And I really want to give flowers to Kolya and Kim and Nina, who all work there and have worked there for quite a long time, who even in Davey's experience, when he's not there, it doesn't change. It's just as good as when he is there. And they're really wonderful at their jobs.
They've really taught them some foundational facts about the art and the generosity of service that informs everything.
Totally.
I completely agree.
And then I also a different side of the same coin, which is a really warm and wonderful service experience in Wellington, would be Rita. So Ortega has that really bouncy, lively bistro vibe. Rita is just as warm and just as attentive, but it's a lot more gentle and but it's really beautiful in there. So of course
you think that the service is a lot like Paul? I was just going to say, that service is just Paul, isn't it? That's how he is.
Yeah, but not just Paul. Paul is incredible and definitely deserves to be on this list. But the people that work for him, there's a young guy called Jesse who works there at the moment, who I actually haven't been served by, but he served my mother and father-in-law recently, and they had the most wonderful experience and just couldn't stop singing his praises.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Those would be my picks, and anyone that feels like I've left them out, please just know that I just haven't been to your restaurant in the last couple of years, and that's all. Yeah.
Do you think that service works really well because those people surround themselves with like-minded people? And that's...
I think so, yeah. I think it's about finding those right personalities and then having a sort of teaching philosophy or style that allows that buy-in and Yeah,
we call it at work we call it the 51%. Yep. So we're looking for the right attitude, the right outlook on life, because recruiting somebody who has a natural tendency to optimism is far more likely to lead to a really successful sort of tenure than somebody who is perhaps naturally a glass half empty kind of person.
Totally.
And somebody who has a sort of natural curiosity about the world and curiosity about other people. If you don't have that natural leaning to want to ask the next question or just linger at the table for a moment longer and find out something, you can't train that in somebody who doesn't naturally have it. So it can be quite a sort of ethereal set of skills that you're often looking for.
Yeah.
Juno, this has been an absolute delight to talk about service with you for this long. Service is something that both Chris and I are incredibly passionate about, having been in the industry for
too long.
More decades than I'd like to name.
Far too long.
You're also both incredible at it yourselves. Just for the record.
It's long been a passion passion for us to shine a light on the service industry, because often in restaurants, especially restaurants like Margot, where you have a very powerful front of house personality and a very powerful chef in the kitchen, the natural leaning for the food industry is definitely to shine the spotlight on the chef.
Yeah.
And we can all understand that because food is universal. But I think what really sets our industry apart is these talented professionals who go the extra mile in the front of house and really lean into that guest experience. And that's something that, well, you've done for a long time, and now you're teaching in many ways the next generation. So thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for sharing. This has been a real thrill for us.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much.
And you've given us a couple of names. Well, Katie was already on the list. Enzo is on the list. Paul is on the list. Paul, we're coming for you. I'm really excited to see where these conversations go and start to give service the celebrated platform that it deserves.
Nice.
So, a real pleasure to do our first podcast with you. This has been a real thrill. Thank you so much for your time.
Honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Juno.
The Kitchen Day podcast is recorded and produced by Jono at Empire Films. We film here at Loretta, where we get to hear incredible stories from some of New Zealand's most talented front of house professionals. If you enjoyed today's conversation and you know somebody else who might like to hear it too, I would love it if you would share it with them, or better yet, hit subscribe. It's a little thing like that that helps us to continue to bring these stories to you in season 2 and beyond. Thank you so much for listening today. Have a great service.